The Caltherian Empire had conquered 47 star systems in less than a decade. Their military might was legendary across the galaxy. Their warriors bred for combat from birth. Their technology advanced beyond most civilizations' wildest dreams. So when the first reports came in about a single human operative systematically dismantling their forward operating bases, High Commander Vextar dismissed them as propaganda. "Humans are weak," he growled to his intelligence officer, his forearms gesturing dismissively at the holographic display. "They have no natural weapons, no enhanced physiology, no psychic abilities. One human cannot possibly threaten our operations." Intelligence Officer Mordan shifted nervously, his crystalline exoskeleton clicking softly. "Sir, the reports are coming from multiple sources. 7 bases have gone dark in the past month. Each time, the security footage shows the same figure." The hologram flickered to life, showing grainy surveillance footage from Base Theta 7. A humanoid figure in dark tactical gear moved through corridors with impossible stealth. The being seemed to anticipate every guard patrol, every security protocol. Where Caltherian warriors fell, they fell silently, efficiently, without ever seeing their attacker's face. Vextar's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Show me the casualties." The display shifted to show medical reports. Elite Caltherian shock troopers, each standing nearly 8 feet tall and weighing over 400 pounds, had been neutralized with surgical precision. Pressure points that shouldn't have existed on Caltherian anatomy had been exploited. Weapons that should have been impossible for a human to wield had been turned against their own forces. "The human uses our own equipment," Mordan explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "Somehow they've learned to operate every piece of Caltherian technology they encounter. Energy rifles calibrated for our warriors' enhanced strength, armor systems designed for our physiology, even command codes that should be impossible to crack." The High Commander studied the footage again. The human moved like water, flowing around obstacles, appearing and disappearing from camera angles with disturbing ease. Most unsettling was the complete absence of hesitation. Every movement was calculated, purposeful, deadly. "What do we know about this operative's identity?" "Nothing, sir. No DNA signatures match any known human databases. No communications intercepts. No intelligence from our human informants. It's as if this person doesn't exist in any official capacity." Vextar's primary eyes narrowed while his secondary eyes continued scanning the tactical displays. "But they have a designation?" Mordan's exoskeleton darkened, a sign of anxiety among his species. "The troops have begun calling them Ghostwalker. The name has spread through the barracks faster than we can contain it. Morale is suffering, sir. Our warriors are starting to fear shadows." The High Commander's rage was palpable. His species had evolved as apex predators on a world where everything wanted to kill them. Fear was not an emotion they experienced often, and never in response to prey species like humans. "Deploy the hunter pods to the remaining forward bases," he commanded. "If this Ghostwalker wants to play games, we'll give them worthy opponents." The hunter pods were Caltherian special forces, cybernetically enhanced warriors who had undergone genetic modification to become perfect killing machines. Each pod contained 5 hunters, capable of tracking prey across multiple star systems, armed with weapons that could level city blocks. 3 days later, the reports came in from Base Omega-3. The hunter pod had been neutralized within 6 hours of deployment. The base's self-destruct sequence had been triggered, but not before the facility's entire intelligence database had been copied and transmitted to an unknown location. Most disturbing of all, the hunters had been killed using their own enhanced abilities against them. Their cybernetic implants somehow turned into weapons. Mordan stood before his commander, his entire frame trembling. "Sir, the survivors from the nearby patrol ship report seeing something impossible. The Ghostwalker was observed carrying one of the hunters' plasma cannons, a weapon that weighs over 200 pounds and requires cybernetic strength enhancement to operate." "That's impossible," Vextar snarled. "Human physiology cannot support that kind of—" "The recording, sir." Mordan activated the hologram. The footage was brief but clear. A figure in tactical gear, distinctly human in silhouette, wielding a massive Caltherian plasma cannon one-handed, while scaling the exterior of the base. The weapon fired with perfect accuracy, its recoil that should have shattered human bones seemingly absorbed without effort. Vextar stared at the image in silence for long moments. Around them, The command center buzzed with nervous activity as junior officers attempted to process reports from across their territory. The Ghost Walker had struck again, and again, each attack more audacious than the last. "Has any human government claimed responsibility?" the High Commander finally asked. "No, sir. In fact, when we contacted the Terran Federation through diplomatic channels, they seemed genuinely surprised by our accusations. Their military databases show no record of any operative matching this description." The implications were staggering. Either the humans were lying with perfect coordination across their entire government structure, or this Ghost Walker was operating without any official sanction. A rogue agent with capabilities that defied everything the Caltherian Empire understood about human limitations. "Sir," a communications officer called out urgently, "we're receiving a transmission on Caltherian military frequencies. Source unknown. Put it through." The command center fell silent as a voice filled the space. It was distinctly human, but spoke perfect Caltherian with an accent that suggested native fluency. The words were simple, direct, terrifying in their calm certainty. "Your empire spreads like a disease across peaceful worlds. Your warriors believe strength comes from size and technology. You are wrong. Strength comes from knowing your enemy better than they know themselves. I know you, Vextar of the 7th Talon. I know your protocols, your strategies, your fears. You cannot stop what you cannot understand, and you will never understand the depths of human adaptability." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Vextar's 4 hands clenched into fists. Somehow this human had not only penetrated their most secure facilities, but had gained access to their command frequencies. More than that, they had spoken his name, his rank, details that should have been classified at the highest levels. "Triple all security protocols," he commanded. "Activate the Dreadnought fleet. If we cannot catch this ghost, we will burn every human world until there is nowhere left to hide." But even as he gave the orders, Vextar felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. How do you fight an enemy who seems to know your every move before you make it? In the depths of space, the Ghost Walker received the intercepted communications and smiled beneath their tactical mask. The Caltherians were about to learn a valuable lesson about underestimating humanity's greatest weapon: the ability to become whatever the situation demanded. Captain Elena Vasquez finished her shift aboard the mining vessel Terra's Pride and made her way to the communications bay. To her fellow miners, she was just another grunt worker pulling double shifts in the asteroid belt. They had no idea that their quiet, unremarkable colleague had spent the last 3 months systematically infiltrating and destroying Caltherian military installations. The ship's communication array was ancient by most standards, but Elena had made subtle modifications over the weeks. Hidden within the standard mining reports transmitted to Earth were encrypted data packets containing complete intelligence on Caltherian military capabilities, troop movements, and technological specifications. Her real name wasn't Elena Vasquez. That identity, like dozens of others, was a carefully constructed legend maintained by organizations that officially didn't exist. She had been many people over the years: a diplomat's daughter, a cargo ship engineer, a colonial administrator's aide. Each identity was crafted to place her exactly where she needed to be when humanity required the impossible. The mining ship's captain, a gruff Martian named Thompson, knocked on the communication bay's door. "Vasquez, we got word from the company. They're moving us to a new sector tomorrow, some kind of military activity in the area." Elena nodded, maintaining her cover. "Copy that, Captain. I'll update our navigation logs." What Thompson didn't know was that Elena had orchestrated their reassignment. Intelligence suggested the Caltherians were planning a major offensive against the outer colonies, and she needed to be in position to disrupt their supply lines. The mining vessel, with its industrial equipment and legitimate reason for traveling through contested space, was the perfect cover. After Thompson left, Elena activated her secure communication protocols. The message that came through was brief, encoded in a pattern that looked like routine stellar navigation data. Package delivered. Next phase authorized. Remember the Covenant. Elena's jaw tightened at the final phrase. The Covenant of Titan was humanity's darkest moment, when first contact with an alien species had resulted in the complete extinction of human colonies on 3 worlds. 20 million people had died because humanity had approached the situation with naive optimism. believing that all intelligent species shared basic concepts of mercy and diplomacy. Elena had been 15 when the images came back from New Geneva. She still remembered her father, a career diplomat, breaking down as he watched the footage of entire cities reduced to ash. The aliens had given no warning, accepted no surrender, shown no quarter to civilian populations. They had simply demonstrated that humans were soft, weak, and unworthy of existing in their galaxy. That was the day humanity stopped believing in the inherent goodness of the universe. The organizations that didn't exist were born from that tragedy. Groups with no names, no official recognition, no accountability except to the survival of the human species. They recruited individuals who could become anyone, do anything, sacrifice everything to ensure that humanity would never again face extinction through naivety. Elena closed the communication and began preparing for the next phase of her mission. The Caltherian dreadnought fleet was assembling at Kepler Station, a massive military installation in the Vega system. Intelligence suggested they were planning a decisive strike against Earth itself, believing that removing humanity's homeworld would end the species' resistance to Caltherian expansion. They were wrong about human nature, but Elena couldn't allow them to test their theory. The mining ship's industrial fabricators were designed to process asteroid ore, but with the right modifications, they could produce other things. Over the past weeks, Elena had been using the fabricators during her night shifts to create specialized equipment. Molecular disruptors designed to destabilize the exotic matter that powered Caltherian shields. Nanite swarms programmed to infiltrate and corrupt alien computer systems, weapons that existed only in theoretical papers from humanity's most classified research programs. The other miners assumed she was working on efficiency improvements for the equipment. They had no idea she was building tools of war that would make the Caltherian Empire's worst nightmares seem like pleasant dreams. 3 days later, the Terra's Pride arrived at the edge of the Vega system. Captain Thompson was nervous about operating so close to military activity, but the company had offered substantial bonuses for mining operations in the area. What he didn't know was that Elena had arranged for the contracts through shell companies controlled by her handlers. "Vasquez, you're with me on the surface survey," Thompson announced. "We need to identify the best asteroid clusters for the heavy equipment." Elena nodded, concealing her satisfaction. The surface survey would put her within shuttle range of Kepler Station, exactly where she needed to be. The shuttle bay of the mining vessel was cramped and utilitarian, designed for short-range operations. Elena had modified one of the survey shuttles over the past weeks, upgrading its stealth capabilities and installing equipment that definitely wasn't standard mining gear. To casual inspection, it looked like sensor improvements and navigation upgrades. As they approached the designated survey zone, Elena monitored the communication channels. Caltherian military traffic was heavy, with constant reports of fleet movements and defensive preparations. The alien commanders were confident, discussing their upcoming cleansing operation against Earth with the casual tone of beings planning a routine extermination. "Jesus, look at that," Thompson whispered, pointing through the shuttle's viewport. Kepler Station hung in space like a metallic cancer, its bulk extending for kilometers in every direction. Dozens of Caltherian dreadnoughts surrounded the facility, each ship capable of reducing a planet to molten slag. The sight would have filled most humans with despair. Elena felt only cold calculation. "Impressive," she said aloud, maintaining her cover. "Glad we're just miners. I wouldn't want to be on the wrong side of that fleet." Thompson laughed nervously. "You should thank God humanity stays out of alien politics, and can you imagine if we had to fight something like that?" Elena smiled but said nothing. Thompson had no idea that in 12 hours, that magnificent fleet would be nothing but expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The Caltherians had built their station and assembled their forces with typical alien arrogance, believing that impressive displays of power were sufficient deterrent against human interference. They had never encountered a human who had spent years learning to think like them, to anticipate their strategies, to turn their own strengths against them. They had never faced someone who understood that the greatest weapon wasn't the size of your fleet or the power of your technology. The greatest weapon was becoming invisible until the moment you struck as the shuttle continued its survey pattern. Elena began the final preparations for an operation that would echo through the galaxy. The Caltherians called her Ghostwalker, But that name barely scratched the surface of what she had become. She was humanity's answer to a universe that had declared war on the concept of human survival. And tonight she would remind every alien species why declaring war on humanity was the last mistake civilizations ever made. The maintenance shaft that Elena crawled through was barely wide enough for a human, which made it perfect for her purposes. Caltherian engineering assumed that any potential infiltrator would be roughly their size, massive, heavily armored, and incapable of fitting through spaces designed for automated systems. They had never considered that their greatest enemy might be a species that viewed impossibly tight spaces as tactical advantages. Elena had separated from the mining survey 12 hours ago, using a modified emergency pod to approach Kepler Station. The pod's stealth systems were based on technology that officially didn't exist, developed in black sites scattered across human space. To Caltherian sensors, she was just another piece of debris in a system full of asteroid mining operations. The station's internal structure was a maze of corridors, service tunnels, and maintenance networks designed to accommodate beings 3 times human size. What the Caltherians saw as efficient engineering, Elena saw as an infiltrator's paradise. She had spent weeks studying captured architectural plans, memorizing every pathway, every security checkpoint, every potential route to her objective. The central command core lay 17 levels below her current position, protected by energy fields that could disintegrate most known materials, and guarded by the finest warriors the Caltherian Empire could produce. Getting there would require more than stealth. It would require turning the station's own systems against its defenders. Elena paused at a junction where 3 maintenance shafts converged. Consulting the tactical display built into her wrist unit, the device showed the locations of every Caltherian on the station, their movement patterns, their communication frequencies. She had been monitoring their activities for days, learning their routines, identifying the precise moment when their defenses would be most vulnerable. The Caltherians were creatures of habit, despite their military training. They rotated guards at specific intervals, conducted system checks according to rigid schedules, and communicated using protocols that followed predictable patterns. They saw these routines as signs of discipline and efficiency. Elena saw them as exploitable weaknesses. She began moving through the station's ventilation system, planting devices the size of coins at strategic locations. Each device contained a swarm of nanites programmed with specific tasks. Some would infiltrate computer systems, others would corrupt communication networks, and a few would begin the process of destabilizing the exotic matter that powered the station's shields and weapons. The nanites were humanity's answer to alien technological superiority. Where aliens built bigger, humans built smaller. Where aliens relied on brute force, humans used precision and subtlety. Each nanite was a masterpiece of engineering that could adapt, evolve, and overcome countermeasures in real time. As Elena worked her way deeper into the station, she monitored the Caltherian communication channels. The alien commanders were discussing their upcoming assault on Earth with casual confidence. They spoke of human cities as if they were already ruins, of human populations as if they were already extinct. "The human homeworld will burn within the week," High Commander Vextar's voice crackled through the comm system. "Their pathetic fleet cannot stand against our dreadnoughts. Once Earth falls, the remaining colonies will surrender or be eliminated." Elena smiled grimly as she attached another device to a critical power junction. The Caltherians had made 2 fundamental errors in their assessment of humanity. First, they assumed that removing Earth would cripple human resistance. In reality, the scattered colonies had spent decades preparing for exactly this scenario, building hidden shipyards, training independent fleets, and developing weapons that could function without centralized command. Second, they assumed that humans fought like Caltherians, with overwhelming force applied directly to military targets. They had never encountered an opponent who preferred to strike at the heart of their power structure while remaining completely invisible. Elena reached the main computer core 3 hours later, having navigated through 17 levels of alien architecture without triggering a single alarm. The chamber was massive, filled with crystalline data storage units that hummed with exotic energy. Dozens of Caltherian technicians moved through the space, monitoring systems that controlled everything from life support to weapons targeting. The Ghostwalker designation had spread through their ranks over the past months, and Elena could see the effects of that fear in the technicians' behavior. They jumped at shadows, checked and rechecked their security protocols, and spoke in hushed whispers about the human who could apparently appear anywhere without warning. Elena studied the security layout through a hidden camera built into her tactical gear. The computer core was protected by energy barriers, automated defense systems, and elite guards positioned at every entrance. Under normal circumstances, penetrating these defenses would be impossible for a single operative, but Elena wasn't operating under normal circumstances. The nanites she had planted throughout the station had been working for hours, infiltrating systems, mapping networks, and identifying vulnerabilities. They had discovered something the Caltherians didn't know about their own technology. The same exotic matter that powered their shields created a quantum entanglement field that could be exploited by someone who understood the underlying physics. Elena activated a device that looked like a standard emergency beacon but was actually a quantum manipulator developed in humanity's most classified laboratories. The device sent a signal that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, existing in a state of quantum superposition until it interacted with the station's entanglement field. The result was instantaneous and devastating. Every energy barrier in the computer core flickered and died as the quantum field collapsed. Emergency alarms began blaring as backup systems failed to compensate for the cascade failure. The Caltherian technicians stared in confusion as their most advanced technology simply stopped working. Elena dropped from a ventilation grate directly into the center of the chaos, moving with fluid precision through the panicking aliens. The Caltherians were trained for combat, but they had never faced an opponent who understood their technology better than they did, who could turn their most sophisticated systems into weapons against them. She reached the primary data core before the guards could react. Plugging a crystalline storage device into the central processing unit, the device began copying not just the station's operational data, but the complete technological specifications of every system in the Caltherian fleet. Weapons designs, shield configurations, tactical protocols, strategic plans, everything humanity would need to turn the tide of the war. The transfer completed in seconds, but those seconds felt like an eternity as Caltherian security forces converged on the computer core. Elena could hear their heavy footsteps, their shouted commands, the distinctive whine of charging energy weapons. She activated the final phase of her plan. The nanites throughout the station received their execution signal and began their work of destruction. Not random sabotage, but surgical strikes against specific systems designed to create maximum chaos with minimum warning. Life support fluctuated but remained functional. Gravity generators created localized anomalies that sent aliens tumbling through corridors. Communication systems began broadcasting false orders and contradictory reports. Most importantly, the station's weapon systems turned on the dreadnought fleet. Elena watched through the computer displays as Kepler Station's massive defense arrays swiveled toward the assembled ships, charging weapons that could crack planetary crusts. The Caltherian commanders tried desperately to regain control, but the nanites had corrupted every command pathway, every authentication protocol, every safety system. The first dreadnought died in a burst of coherent energy that lit up the entire system. Then the second, then the third. Within minutes, the pride of the Caltherian Empire was reduced to expanding clouds of superheated metal and exotic matter. The aliens who had planned to exterminate humanity watched helplessly as their most powerful weapons were turned against them by an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't predict, and couldn't stop. Elena made her way back to the ventilation system as the station shook with secondary explosions. The Caltherians would eventually regain control, but by then it would be too late. The fleet was gone, their tactical advantage was eliminated, and humanity had gained access to every secret the Empire possessed. But more than that, every alien species in the galaxy would soon learn what happened when you threatened human survival. They would learn that humans didn't just fight back, they became their enemies' worst nightmares made manifest. Admiral Kexton of the Hegemony Fleet received the emergency transmission while reviewing tactical reports in his flagship's command center. The message came from High Commander Vextar of the Caltherian Empire, transmitted on frequencies reserved for the most catastrophic military disasters. Kepler Station has fallen. The entire 7th Fleet has been destroyed. Request immediate military assistance. Kexton's segmented eyes widened in disbelief. The Caltherian 7th Fleet had been the most powerful naval force in the galaxy. capable of sterilizing entire star systems. The idea that it could be destroyed, especially at their most heavily fortified military installation, seemed impossible. "Verify the transmission," he ordered his communications officer, a multi-limbed being whose species had served the hegemony for 3 centuries. The verification came back authentic, complete with Caltherian command codes that were updated daily. The transmission was genuine, which made its contents even more disturbing. "Sir," the communications officer said, his voice trembling with something that might have been fear, "we're receiving similar reports from across Caltherian space. 17 major installations have gone dark in the past 6 hours. Their entire military infrastructure is collapsing." Kexton studied the tactical displays with growing alarm. The Caltherian Empire had been the hegemony's most reliable ally, their combined fleets forming the backbone of galactic security. If the Caltherians were truly falling to some unknown enemy, the implications for the rest of the galaxy were catastrophic. "What do we know about the attacking force?" Kexton demanded. "That's the disturbing part, sir. According to Caltherian reports, there is no attacking force. No enemy fleets, no invasion armies, no visible opposition. Their installations are simply being destroyed from within." The Admiral's mandibles clicked nervously. His species had evolved as pack hunters on a world where predators often used camouflage and stealth. The concept of an invisible enemy triggered ancient genetic memories of fear. "Show me the tactical analysis." The holographic display materialized above the command console, showing the distribution of Caltherian losses across their territory. The pattern was unlike anything in recorded military history. Rather than the broad front advances or concentrated strikes typical of conventional warfare, the attack seemed random, simultaneous, coordinated across impossible distances. "Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from Hegemony Command," the communications officer announced. "All fleet commanders are ordered to attend an emergency council session." The emergency council convened in virtual space, bringing together military leaders from a dozen different species. Admiral Kexton found himself in a digital amphitheater, alongside beings he had fought beside for decades. The mood was grim, the conversation filled with disbelief and growing panic. Fleet Commander Zaranis of the Crystalline Collective spoke first, her crystalline body pulsing with agitated energy. "Our intelligence networks confirm the Caltherian reports. Their military capability has been reduced by 70% in less than 12 hours. Whatever is responsible for this has capabilities that exceed our understanding of warfare." General Thexmore of the warrior clans leaned forward, his massive frame crackling with barely controlled aggression. "Caltherians are weak, but they are not stupid. If their entire fleet command structure has been compromised, we are dealing with an enemy that operates on principles we have never encountered." Admiral Kexton accessed the shared intelligence reports, studying the fragmentary data collected from the attacks. The pattern that emerged was both fascinating and terrifying. Every strike had been precisely calculated to cause maximum damage, while remaining completely undetectable until the moment of execution. The attacks show intimate knowledge of Caltherian technology, protocols, and weaknesses, he observed. "This suggests either a significant intelligence infiltration or what, Admiral?" Zaranis asked. "Or we are dealing with an enemy that understands our technology better than we do ourselves." The council chamber fell silent as the implications of that statement sank in. Every species in the hegemony had developed their military capabilities over millennia, refining strategies and technologies through countless conflicts. The idea that some unknown force could appear and immediately demonstrate superior understanding was beyond disturbing. General Thexmore's voice rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder. "There is one species that has been mentioned in Caltherian reports, a species they were planning to exterminate as part of their expansion operations. Humans," Admiral Kexton said quietly. "But intelligence reports indicate they are a primitive species with limited technology and no significant military capabilities." "Perhaps our intelligence reports are wrong," Zaranis suggested. "Or perhaps we have fundamentally misunderstood what constitutes military capability." The council spent the next hour reviewing everything they knew about humanity. The reports painted a picture of a young species that had only recently achieved interstellar flight, with scattered colonies and a decentralized government structure. Their technology seemed centuries behind hegemony standards, their military forces laughably small compared to galactic powers. yet the evidence was undeniable. The Caltherian Empire, one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that appeared to be human in origin. "We need more information," Admiral Kexthon declared. "I'm ordering reconnaissance missions to human space. If these beings are responsible for the Caltherian defeats, we need to understand how they operate before they turn their attention to us." 3 days later, the reconnaissance reports began arriving, and they painted a picture that challenged everything the hegemony thought they knew about warfare. Human space was not organized like a traditional military empire. Instead of centralized command structures and massive fleets, they found a network of independent colonies connected by quantum communication arrays and protected by forces that seemed to appear and disappear without warning. The human military doctrine was unlike anything in galactic military theory. Rather than building bigger ships or more powerful weapons, they had focused on creating smaller, more adaptable forces that could operate independently for extended periods. Their technology emphasized stealth, infiltration, and psychological warfare over direct confrontation. Most disturbing of all, the reconnaissance teams discovered evidence that humans had been studying galactic civilizations for years, collecting intelligence through methods that were completely undetectable to conventional security systems. They had somehow gained access to technical specifications, military protocols, and strategic plans from every major power in the galaxy. Admiral Kexthon stared at the reports in his private quarters, feeling something he had never experienced in his decades of military service: uncertainty. The humans had not just defeated the Caltherians through superior firepower or advanced technology. They had defeated them by understanding their enemies better than their enemies understood themselves. A soft chime indicated an incoming message on his personal communication array. The transmission was tagged with the highest priority codes, but the source was listed as unknown. Kexthon activated the message, and a human face appeared on his display. The being looked unremarkable by human standards: average height, average build, with features that would be easily forgotten in a crowd. But the eyes held an intelligence that made the Admiral's genetic prey instinct scream warnings. "Admiral Kexthon of the Hegemony Fleet," the human said in perfect hegemony standard, without even a trace of accent. "My name is not important, but my message is. The Caltherian Empire chose to view humanity as prey. They planned to exterminate our species as an obstacle to their expansion. They learned that humanity does not accept extinction quietly." The Admiral's hands trembled as he realized the implications. This transmission was being sent on secure hegemony frequencies, using command codes that should have been impossible for any alien species to obtain. "The hegemony has a choice," the human continued. "You can continue supporting civilizations that view genocide as an acceptable solution to territorial disputes, or you can learn to coexist with a species that has spent its entire existence learning to survive against impossible odds. Choose wisely, Admiral. We know where your fleets are positioned. We understand your technology, and we have been watching your society for longer than you realize." The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Kexthon alone with the terrifying realization that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted permanently. Humanity had emerged from obscurity not as conquerors, but as something far more dangerous, the ultimate predator in a universe that had forgotten how to be prey. Elena stood in the observation deck of the research facility, hidden in the asteroid belt, watching the live feed from 12 different star systems simultaneously. The screen showed the aftermath of humanity's calculated response to the Caltherian threat: empty space where dreadnought fleets had once patrolled, silent communication arrays that had previously carried orders for human extinction, and the scattered debris of military installations that had believed themselves impregnable. The facility itself was a marvel of human engineering, built into a hollowed-out asteroid and invisible to any known sensor technology. Here, teams of scientists, tacticians, and operatives coordinated humanity's shadow war against alien oppression. They called it the Nexus, and officially, it didn't exist. "Status report," Elena said to the tactical coordinator, a former military analyst named Chen who had helped design humanity's unconventional response to galactic threats. "The Caltherian Empire has lost approximately 80% of its military capability," Chen reported, his fingers dancing across holographic displays. "Their remaining forces are in full retreat, abandoning forward positions and consolidating around their core worlds. Intelligence suggests their government is considering a negotiated surrender. Elena nodded but felt no satisfaction. The Caltharians had been just one threat among many. The galaxy was full of species that viewed humanity as inferior, expendable, or useful only as slave labor. Defeating one empire would only draw attention from others. What about the hegemony response? She asked. Confused and cautious, Chen replied. Our message to Admiral Kexathon has been shared through their command structure. They're conducting their own investigations into human capabilities, but they're being very careful not to trigger a direct confrontation. That was exactly what Elena had hoped for. Humans couldn't win a conventional war against the combined forces of galactic civilization. They lacked the numbers, the resources, and the industrial capacity, but they could win through fear, uncertainty, and the gradual realization that humanity represented something unprecedented in galactic history. Show me the psychological warfare results, Elena requested. A new set of displays activated, showing communication intercepts from across alien space. The reports painted a picture of growing paranoia among alien military forces. Stories of the Ghostwalker had evolved far beyond Elena's actual activities, becoming legends that credited humanity with supernatural abilities. Alien soldiers spoke of humans who could walk through solid matter, who could predict the future, who could control alien technology with their thoughts. The truth was far more mundane. Humans had simply spent years studying their enemies and developing countermeasures, but the legends were far more effective than any conventional weapon. Psychological impact is exceeding our projections, Chen observed. Multiple alien governments are implementing new security protocols based on assumed human capabilities that we don't actually possess. They're wasting enormous resources defending against threats that exist only in their imagination. Elena smiled grimly. Humanity's greatest advantage had always been adaptability. But their second greatest advantage was the ability to make others overestimate their capabilities. Let the aliens believe humans were supernatural beings with impossible powers. It was far more effective than revealing the truth, that humans were simply very good at understanding how their enemies thought. What about the resistance movements? Elena asked. This was the part of the strategy that Elena was most proud of. For decades, alien empires had suppressed dozens of species, treating them as subjects or slaves. But the success against the Caltharians had inspired these oppressed populations to believe that resistance was possible. 17. Different species have initiated uprisings against their alien overlords, Chen reported. They're using tactics adapted from human irregular warfare manuals, transmitted through our quantum communication networks. The hegemony is facing internal rebellions on multiple fronts, all coordinated using human organizational principles. Elena studied the rebellion reports with growing satisfaction. This was the true genius of humanity's approach to galactic politics. Rather than trying to conquer alien empires directly, they were teaching oppressed species how to liberate themselves. Each successful uprising weakened the established powers and created new allies for humanity. The Zephyrian Liberation Movement has successfully captured 3 mining colonies, Chen continued. The ethereal resistance has disabled the orbital platforms controlling their homeworld. Most significantly, the Crystalline Collective is reporting that their slave populations are somehow coordinating across different star systems simultaneously. That last development was particularly impressive. The Crystalline Collective had spent centuries perfecting their system of population control, using psychic dampening fields to prevent their slaves from organizing. But human quantum communication technology operated on principles that bypassed psychic interference entirely. Elena activated her personal communication device and selected a priority channel. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Director Morrison, the head of humanity's shadow intelligence organization. Like Elena, Morrison had dedicated his life to ensuring that humanity would never again face extinction through naivety. Report, Ghostwalker, Morrison said using Elena's operational codename. Phase 1 is complete, Elena replied. The Caltharian threat has been neutralized, and the psychological warfare campaign is exceeding projections. We're ready to proceed to Phase 2. Phase 2 was the most dangerous part of humanity's strategy. It involved direct diplomatic contact with alien governments, revealing humanity's true capabilities while demonstrating that cooperation was more beneficial than conflict. The risk was enormous. If the aliens decided to unite against humanity, even the most sophisticated guerrilla tactics might not be enough to ensure survival. "Are you certain the timing is right?" Morrison asked. "Our intelligence suggests that several alien governments are considering a preemptive strike against human space." Elena had anticipated this possibility. Fear could be a powerful weapon, but it could also drive enemies to desperate actions. The key was demonstrating strength without triggering the kind of united response that could overwhelm even humanity's advantages. "The resistance movements are our insurance policy," Elena explained. "If the aliens unite against us, they'll be fighting rebellions on dozens of fronts simultaneously. They can't sustain a war against humanity while their own populations are in revolt." Morrison nodded slowly. He had learned to trust Elena's tactical assessments over the years, recognizing that her ability to think like their enemies gave her insights that conventional military analysis often missed. "Very well," he said. "You have authorization for Phase 2, but Elena, be careful. We're about to find out whether humanity's bet on unconventional warfare was brilliant or catastrophically stupid." The communication ended, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts. She had spent years becoming the Ghost Walker, transforming herself into the kind of operative that alien nightmares were made of. But the truth was that she was just one person among billions, all working toward the same goal, ensuring that humanity would survive and thrive in a galaxy that had initially seen them as expendable. Elena activated the facility's main communication array and began transmitting on frequencies, monitored by every major alien government. The message she sent was simple, direct, and calculated to achieve maximum psychological impact. "To all alien governments currently monitoring human space, I am the operative you have designated as Ghost Walker. For the past 2 years, I have been responsible for the systematic destruction of Caltherian military capabilities. I have penetrated your most secure facilities, corrupted your most advanced technology, and demonstrated that your military superiority is an illusion based on outdated assumptions about human capabilities." Elena paused, knowing that her words were being analyzed by intelligence services across the galaxy, that alien leaders were probably watching this transmission in real time. "But I am not unique among my species. I am simply one operative among thousands, trained by organizations that have spent decades preparing for this moment. We have studied your cultures, learned your languages, understood your weaknesses, and developed countermeasures for every advantage you believe you possess over humanity." The next part of the message was the most important, the offer that would determine whether the galaxy moved toward cooperation or total war. "Humanity does not seek conquest or domination. We seek only the right to exist and develop according to our own values. The Caltherian Empire chose to view us as a threat to be eliminated. They learned that humans do not accept extinction quietly. You have a choice. Continue the cycle of oppression and violence that has characterized galactic politics for millennia, or recognize that a new kind of civilization has emerged, one that will defend itself with capabilities you are only beginning to understand." Elena ended the transmission and waited. Within hours, response signals would begin arriving from across the galaxy. Some would be threats, others would be attempts at negotiation, and a few might even be offers of genuine cooperation. The Galactic Council chamber had not seen such tension in over 3 centuries. Representatives from 57 different species filled the vast amphitheater, their varied forms creating a living mosaic of galactic civilization. But today, instead of the usual diplomatic discussions about trade routes and territorial boundaries, they were gathered to address an unprecedented crisis: what to do about humanity. Ambassador Velthas of the Ethereal Dominion stood at the central podium, his translucent form shimmering with barely controlled emotion. As the current council president, he had the unenviable task of moderating a discussion that could determine whether the galaxy moved toward cooperation or total war. "The situation is unprecedented in our recorded history," Velthas began, his voice carrying the harmonic frequencies that marked his species' formal address. "A previously unknown civilization has demonstrated military capabilities that exceed our current understanding. The Caltherian Empire, our former ally, has been effectively neutralized by forces we cannot detect, predict, or counter." Murmurs rippled through the chamber as representatives consulted their translation devices and conferred with their advisors. The destruction of the Caltherian military had sent shockwaves through every government in the galaxy. If humans could eliminate such a powerful empire so easily, what did that mean for the rest of galactic civilization? Admiral Kexthan of the Hegemony Fleet stepped forward to address the assembly. His recent communications with the human operative had left him shaken, but also strangely hopeful. Perhaps there was a path forward that didn't require the kind of devastating conflict that would consume the galaxy. "Honored delegates," Kexthan said, "I have had direct contact with human representatives. Their message is clear. They do not seek conquest or domination. They seek only recognition and the right to exist without threat of extermination." General Thexmore of the warrior clan slammed his massive fist against his delegation's table, the sound echoing through the chamber like thunder. They destroy an entire empire and then claim they seek peace? This is the behavior of predators, not diplomats. "Perhaps," interrupted Dr. Lyraneth of the Scientific Consortium, "we should consider why the Caltherians were targeted. Intelligence reports indicate they were planning a genocidal campaign against human colonies. From a human perspective, they were responding to an existential threat." The chamber erupted in heated discussion as delegates argued about the implications of Dr. Lyraneth's observation. Many species had engaged in conquest and expansion throughout galactic history, viewing it as natural and inevitable. The idea that victims might develop the capability to strike back effectively was deeply unsettling. Ambassador Zexion of the Trade Federation called for order. "The economic implications alone are staggering. Human technology appears to operate on principles we don't understand. If we cannot predict or counter their capabilities, how can we maintain stable trade relationships? How can we ensure the security of our shipping routes?" This was the question that troubled every delegate in the chamber. Galactic civilization was built on predictability, known technologies, established military capabilities, understood limitations. Humanity had shattered that predictability by demonstrating abilities that seemed to violate the basic assumptions about what was possible. Veltus gestured for silence. "Before we continue this discussion, I believe we should hear directly from human representatives. They have requested permission to address this assembly." The request had arrived through diplomatic channels just hours before the emergency session. No human had ever spoken before the Galactic Council, primarily because most species had viewed humanity as too primitive to warrant inclusion in galactic politics. That assumption had proven to be catastrophically wrong. "Do we even know if their representative is actually human?" asked Senator Morgeth of the Crystal Courts. "Given their apparent technological capabilities, how can we be certain we are not dealing with synthetic beings or some form of advanced artificial intelligence?" The question highlighted one of the most unsettling aspects of humanity's emergence. Every intelligence assessment about human capabilities had proven to be wrong. If they had been so mistaken about human technology and military potential, what else had they misunderstood about this species? Admiral Kex then activated his personal communication device. "I have been authorized by Hegemony Command to share our most recent intelligence assessments. Our reconnaissance missions to human space have revealed a civilization unlike any we have previously encountered." The chamber's central holographic display activated, showing images from the reconnaissance missions. The scenes were both familiar and alien. Human cities that looked primitive by galactic standards, but organized according to principles that suggested a completely different approach to civilization. "Human society appears to be built around the concept of adaptability," Kex then explained. "Rather than developing massive centralized structures like most galactic civilizations, they have created networks of independent communities that can function autonomously while remaining connected through quantum communication systems." The implications were staggering. Most galactic empires could be defeated by destroying their capital worlds or central command structures. But human civilization appeared to be designed to survive and function even if most of its components were destroyed. "Their military doctrine reflects this same philosophy," Kex then continued. "Instead of building larger fleets or more powerful weapons, they have focused on creating small, highly adaptable forces that can operate independently for extended periods. Each human operative appears to be capable of functioning as an entire intelligence and sabotage organization." Dr. Lyraneth accessed her species analysis of human technology. "Our scientists have examined the few examples of human technology we have been able to acquire. The engineering principles are unlike anything in our databases. They appear to have developed nanotechnology to a degree that allows individual devices to adapt and evolve in response to new challenges. The chamber fell silent as the delegates absorbed this information. Nanotechnology was known to galactic science, but no civilization had developed it to the level that Dr. Lyraneth was describing. The ability to create devices that could evolve and adapt would explain how humans had been able to overcome alien technology so effectively. There is another factor we must consider, Velthas said quietly. The resistance movements that have emerged across our territories are using human organizational techniques and communication technology. If we choose to engage in conflict with humanity, we will be fighting not just humans, but our own subject populations armed with human knowledge. This was the reality that no delegate wanted to acknowledge. Galactic civilization was built on hierarchy and control, with advanced species ruling over less developed ones. But humanity had provided oppressed populations with the tools and knowledge they needed to challenge that hierarchy. General Thexmore's aggressive posture had noticeably diminished as the discussion continued. If we cannot predict their capabilities, cannot counter their technology, and cannot prevent our own populations from adopting their methods, then perhaps the question is not whether we should fight them, but whether we can afford not to cooperate with them. Ambassador Velthas nodded slowly. I believe it is time to hear what humanity has to say. All in favor of allowing human representatives to address this assembly? The vote was unanimous, though many delegates clearly voted out of necessity rather than enthusiasm. They were about to encounter a species that had changed the fundamental rules of galactic politics, and none of them knew what to expect. As the session moved toward recess to prepare for the human address, delegates clustered in small groups, speaking in hushed tones about the implications of what they had learned. The galaxy was about to meet humanity as equals rather than subjects, and the conversation that followed would determine whether the next chapter of galactic history would be written in cooperation or blood. Elena walked into the Galactic Council chamber through the main entrance, making no attempt at stealth or concealment. After years of operating from the shadows, the experience of being openly visible felt strange, almost liberating. She wore simple human attire, a dark business suit that would have been unremarkable on any human world. But in the chamber filled with alien dignitaries, she might as well have been wearing armor made of pure intimidation. The murmurs that had filled the chamber fell silent as delegates caught sight of her. This was their first glimpse of the species that had shattered their understanding of galactic politics. They had expected something extraordinary, advanced technology, exotic physiology, or visible signs of the supernatural capabilities attributed to human operatives. Instead, they saw a woman who looked utterly ordinary by any reasonable standard. Elena took her position at the central podium, studying the faces and forms of representatives from across the galaxy. These beings had built civilizations that spanned star systems, commanded technologies that could reshape matter at the molecular level, and wielded military forces capable of reducing planets to ash. Yet she could see uncertainty in their expressions, the kind of fundamental doubt that came from realizing everything you believed about the universe might be wrong. Honored delegates, Elena began, speaking in perfect galactic standard. I am Elena Vasquez, though many of you know me by the designation Ghostwalker. I stand before you not as a conqueror or a threat, but as a representative of humanity's desire for peaceful coexistence with galactic civilization. Ambassador Velthas leaned forward slightly. Representative Vasquez, we have heard claims about human capabilities that seem to exceed known physical laws. Are these reports accurate? Elena smiled, recognizing the question for what it really was, an attempt to understand whether humans possessed genuinely supernatural abilities or simply very advanced technology. The truth would be both disappointing and terrifying to most of the delegates. We possess no abilities that violate physical laws, Elena replied. What we possess is something far more dangerous to those who would oppress others. We understand you better than you understand yourselves. The statement sent ripples of confusion through the chamber. General Thexmore stood, his massive frame radiating skepticism. You claim to understand species you have never encountered, civilizations that predate your own by millennia? General, your species evolved as pack hunters on a world with 18-hour days and high gravity. Your military doctrine emphasizes overwhelming force applied through coordinated group tactics. Your greatest fear is being isolated from your pack, which is why your warriors never operate alone, and why solitary confinement is considered the ultimate punishment in your justice system. General Thexmore's expression shifted from skepticism to something approaching shock. The details Elena had recited were not common knowledge outside his species' homeworld. Elena continued, addressing different delegates in turn. Ambassador Veltas, your species communicates through harmonic frequencies that convey emotional context as well as meaning. You view deception as literally discordant, which is why your diplomatic services struggle with species that view misdirection as a legitimate negotiating tactic. She turned to Dr. Lyra Neth. Doctor, your species' scientific method is based on consensus reality. Knowledge is only considered valid when confirmed by multiple independent observers. This makes you excellent researchers but poor rapid decision makers, which is why your military forces require extensive committee approvals for tactical changes. The chamber was completely silent now, delegates staring at Elena with expressions that ranged from amazement to terror. She was demonstrating the foundation of humanity's strategic advantage, the ability to understand alien psychology with frightening accuracy. How is this possible? Admiral Kexton asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Because we had to learn, Elena replied simply. When humanity first encountered galactic civilization, we were naive. We believed that intelligence implied wisdom, that advancement meant morality, that other species would share our basic concepts of justice and mercy. We were wrong. Elena activated a holographic display showing images from humanity's first contact disasters. The footage was brutal. Human colonies reduced to ash, civilians executed without mercy. Entire populations eliminated because they were viewed as obstacles to alien expansion. The Covenant of Titan taught us that the universe does not care about human survival. If we wanted to continue existing, we would have to become something the universe couldn't ignore. So we studied every species we encountered. We learned your languages, your cultures, your fears, your weaknesses. We became experts in alien psychology because our survival depended on it. Dr. Lyra Neth accessed her personal database, cross-referencing Elena's statements. The psychological profiles you've described are classified at the highest levels of our respective governments. How did you obtain this information? We watched. We listened. We learned. Humans excel at pattern recognition and behavioral analysis. Give us access to your public communications, your entertainment media, your historical records, and we can construct detailed psychological profiles of your entire species. Most civilizations broadcast more information about themselves than they realize. Elena gestured to the chamber around them. This council session, for example. Every delegate here is following behavioral patterns consistent with their species' psychological makeup. Your seating arrangements, your consultation patterns, even your physical reactions to stress. Everything tells us exactly how your minds work. The implications of Elena's statements were staggering. If humans could understand alien psychology with such precision, they could predict behavior, manipulate responses, and exploit weaknesses with devastating effectiveness. Ambassador Zexion of the Trade Federation found his voice. You speak of understanding, but you destroyed an entire empire. How does that serve peaceful coexistence? Elena's expression hardened. The Caltharian Empire chose to view humanity as a pest to be exterminated. They planned systematic genocide against our colonies. We gave them opportunities to reconsider their approach. They refused. We demonstrated that choosing to view humans as prey was a fatal error in judgment. And now? Veltas asked. What does humanity want from galactic civilization? We want what every species wants, the right to exist, to grow, to develop according to our own values. We don't seek to conquer your worlds or dominate your governments, but we will not tolerate being viewed as expendable, and we will defend any species that faces extinction at the hands of oppressors. Elena activated another display, showing the current status of resistance movements across the galaxy. We have shared our knowledge with oppressed populations throughout your territories. Not weapons or advanced technology, but something far more powerful. Organizational techniques, communication methods, and the understanding that resistance is possible. The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs as delegates realized the full scope of humanity's influence. They weren't just dealing with a single species making demands. They were facing the possibility that the entire foundation of galactic civilization might change. We stand at a crossroads, Elena continued. You can choose to view humanity as a threat to be eliminated, in which case you will learn why the Caltherians failed. Or you can choose to view us as partners in building a galaxy where survival doesn't depend on oppressing others. General Thexmore spoke carefully, and if we choose partnership, what guarantees do we have that humans won't use their capabilities against us? Elena's smile was both reassuring and terrifying. General, we've had the capability to destroy your civilizations for years. If we wanted conquest, you would already be conquered. We're offering partnership because we understand something that most galactic civilizations have forgotten. Cooperation is more effective than domination. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. Humanity succeeded not because we are stronger or more advanced, but because we learned to think like our enemies while retaining our own values. We became the universe's ultimate predator, not through violence but through understanding. Elena stepped back from the podium. The choice is yours, honored delegates. But choose wisely. The galaxy has changed and the old rules no longer apply. Humanity has announced its presence not with conquest fleets, but with a simple demonstration. Those who choose to prey upon others should be very certain they are not. In fact, the prey. As Elena left the chamber, the delegates sat in stunned silence, each grappling with the realization that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had emerged not as conquerors, but as something far more profound. A species that had learned to survive by becoming whatever the universe demanded, while never losing sight of what made them human. The age of human influence had truly begun, and its foundation was not fear or force, but the terrifying power of perfect understanding.